What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Today we're talking Will Kassouf. Will Kassouf.
He doesn't say, he's not telling me how much he's playing. The only way I can find out is by looking here. He's got 4 stacks in a row.
You can't take it. You can't take it. That's why. Let it get to you. You're losing.
What, 1 time or 2 times? We can agree. 1 time? It's up to you. I'm a nice guy. I'll give the option. Once or twice, up to you. Yeah, I'll remember you next year. Yeah. All these tricks. Bunch of little bitches. Little bitches. Look at you. Pathetic.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Today we're talking Will Kassouf. Will has caused quite a ruckus with his questionable antics, so we're going to dive into that. So he's been doing pretty much everything he can, or at least everything he thinks he can. So I'm going to give him some other suggestions to really push the envelope and support why I think his antics are really not a great idea. As someone who's done some annoying things, let's go into why or why not his behavior is okay and talk about the ethics and talk about what is WSOP reasonable for banning him for life? Is this 10-second clock reasonable? So I understand he was just doing this relentlessly, and this is his way of gaining an edge. Allegedly, he has said that all these other wizards are light years ahead of him, and this is his way of gaining an edge. Now, there is a point where this gets to angle shooting. As I tweeted before, I said that I thought that when people go to this kind of extreme to annoy their opponents, to throw them off their game and all that stuff, that it gets to the point of angle shooting because it's not really the whole point of how you should play the game. We're supposed to be playing in terms of strategy, libraries, all that kind of stuff. But to be fair, there is some aspect to the game of mental stamina or mental discipline to not be affected by annoying things. And I do think there's something to the argument of, like, shouldn't people be immune to this kind of stuff? At which point should their games not break down because of all these things? But for sure, there's a point where things get annoying and it's too much and it hurts the whole atmosphere at large. And usually when people that have employed these kinds of tactics, there's all kinds of negative feedback on them with good reason. And it's not exactly isolated. There's loads of people that start to think negatively about these kinds of people. I've seen a few different players do these kinds of strategies, and it's really not that many. For a lot of reasons, you have to have thick skin to handle all the criticism and kind of dive deep into what can be considered self-rationalization to go. Martin Cabriel being one of them. But he seems to have dialed things down, which we'll get into, because maybe dialing things down for Will Kassouf is a good idea. Yeah, a lot of what he's done is definitely not for the sake of edge, even as he busted out last year with his pocket 7s to king 5 suited, just berating the opponents and saying all sorts of bad things, which, you know, I've done these. I will admit that I've made mistakes too, but I actually do not consider these things ethical. I personally made efforts to reduce them as much as possible. I don't believe in such behavior, for the record, even when I've done things along these lines, realizing, okay, I'm being toxic on the environment and to other people, which I think that basically is, for the most part. You make yourself equal when someone else does it to you. Suppose the guy that he said it to and now went back and said some insult to him. Now they're both equal. They're basically both fighting, and that would be, you could say, some would say the karmic reaction to it, or at least the fair reaction. It would be in the vicinity of reasonable anyway, or the guy would just be the good guy and take it and not do anything and try to just to take whatever bad things the Kassouf would be saying to him. Some people have said that the 10-second shot clock has been an unreasonable punishment by the WSOP, but if you think about it, it's actually kind of fair, because when you're talking all the time and people can barely think, it's kind of like they have 10 seconds or some similar amount of time to react. If they have more time to react, you can say that, okay, well, as he's reduced a lot of their time to react in a way that's not really unfair, you could say, okay, well, the punishment should be something with a little bit of markup, and there you have something along the lines of a 10-second shot clock. And to my understanding, he's exceptionally unreasonable in this category, often tanking with things that he's just automatically going to fold. And this is a very unique punishment, suggesting that really you have to go deep to get WSOP to do this kind of thing and possibly shut the fuck up. Now, on the subject of making all these talk game that's abrasive and annoying and gets under your skin for the sake of gaining an edge, I think that there is some level of within reason where it's okay. Allegedly, as an extreme example, there was a boxer who used to call opponent's girlfriends, his name was Mike Perry, right before a match to try to get under the skin. I don't think it takes a whole lot of common sense to see that there's something wrong with this kind of idea. You could also take this to further extremes if this is okay. You can start calling their family members. You could start like messing with their friends. You could bring up things that are traumatizing for people. You could abuse people's trauma for a match. Is any of this ethical? How can any of this be justified? If it was okay to do anything within the rules, well, the official rules anyways, the technical rules to gain some kind of an edge, first of all, now, obviously looking at people's cards when they don't hide them properly would be considered ethical, but this, in the Overton window of what is acceptable for poker, is widely kind of shunned upon, which suggests a point that I'm going to get to in a moment. In addition, I could just bring my flute. You just play some bad flute music. Bring my flute and start playing shittily. I'm actually much better at flute these days, but I know that bringing the flute's going to be annoying. I only brought it once, but definitely it was very polarizing of a response. What a surprise. I want to actually play well and for people that want to hear, which gets a big part to the point of when antics are acceptable, is if people want to see them or not. One of the things is that not everyone wants to see them, but if it has a net positive effect, it's in the direction of arguable, like reasonable, which is largely what I want to do. But anyway, on the point of whether this is ethical or not, I called it an angle shoot because, well, you can come up with all kinds of crazy rules to make something okay. There are golfers in the past that used to like load the golf balls with some kind of, I believe it was Titanic Thompson, who loaded one of his golf balls with a certain kind of magnet and put like a magnet in the hole in order to be able to win. Is there a literal rule against that? I don't know, but you can creatively come up with all kinds of ideas to get around what is actually supposed to be tested in a game in order to win. And it's this whole thought process and themes is not within the spirit of the game, obviously. And the whole premise is that certain things are supposed to be tested in some kind of way. And there is some kind of limit in which the creativity should be within confines of what's acceptable and what's not. I think upon further inspection, because it seems kind of crazy to think, okay, you can't say anything that's going to tilt your opponent, that probably what's acceptable in the context of the game as far as trash talk is to say things in relevance to the game. Because if someone can't handle whatever their ego's attachments to the game, I mean, all this is going to be tested anyway. It's within relevance to the game. So there should be some soft barrier to where this trash talk should go. And I would say it should not go outside into real life issues and more serious issues. I think it's pretty simple in that respect. Generally speaking, if you're a true sportsmanship and if you're not trying to be a predator, and people like to say poker is a mind sport or whatever, then you should actually, you preferably want your opponent to be playing at their best. You don't want to take advantage when they're susceptible, ideally. And for this reason, it's for the best of the actual game. If you want poker to be a sport, you should treat it as a sport for this kinds of reasons. I feel like people don't realize that when they want it to be a sport, they want the best of both worlds. And they don't see the argument on the other side. Well, okay, now people got fucked up and lost all their money, and people are doing all kinds of predatory things. This is quite relevant to that point. There's also things that people can do if any of this is tolerated, such as what Martin Cabriel was doing, whereas he wasn't outright cheating, but he was pretending to be cheating or doing things that were so strange that made people wonder if he was. It's very unsettling to think maybe something was going on, maybe something wasn't, especially considering that Martin Cabriel has done some particularly questionable things in the past. Apparently he was doing the steel blinds thing for a long period of time on the internet, and I believe his rationalization was that it was okay, but it's not okay, because this isn't fair. That's basically the idea. I do think that a lot of these guys think things are okay and they aren't, and they get the feedback from lots of people hating that it's not okay, and they may think, okay, this is within the bounds of the rules, etc., and so it ruffles loads of feathers. Which brings me to my next point, and this also pertains to games where people have a lot of financial incentive to betray each other and think, okay, it's just part of the game, which is sort of true, but we're going to get to the problem with that. Okay, well, here's the problem with that, and the problem, or a large problem with annoying people a lot of time in the game, is very clearly it states that you're willing to take any kind of advantage to gain some kind of edge in what you consider to be a game, and willing to do things to at least temporarily annoy or whatever it is, make some kind of negative impression in order to gain some kind of benefit. And sure enough, people don't like this, and you may think that, okay, it's only in the confines of the game. Not really, because it does have some kind of leaking to other areas of life, and some people may or may not consider games or not. Not everyone has the same kinds of standards as these people, as we can see. And inevitably, it is going to cause some kind of social backlash, such as not being invited to things, such as people hating on you, such as people don't liking you, such as people thinking maybe you're a cheat. And it's pretty clear that there is the term, I believe, is leakage from one area to another, and that basically these things are a little bit more correlated than one might expect. So even if you can make the argument that, okay, the ethics don't really apply that much, you're still going to get a lot of people pissed off, and still a lot of people are going to not like you for such reasons. And the inner tendencies of these things are still there. That's indisputable. I can give some anecdotal evidence from another person who I will not be naming, and who I believe did change their way of doing things, who ended up playing in Macau. And they had a reputation for doing similar-ish things to what Kassouf's doing, trash-talking opponents a lot, never shutting up, being annoying. Also, by the way, slow rolling somewhere in this as well. Not everyone considers a slow roll a lot of fun, but if it is considered fun, then do it. I mean, that's really a big part of the whether to do something or not is if people like it, right? This is how you don't be too annoying, as if people like it or not. You change it. It's a real big key. But anyway, yeah, he was not invited to certain events, and he would go out of his way to try to convince people that he's actually a good guy and all that. I'm sure Will Kassouf thinks the same. Everyone always thinks they're a good guy. Some people are really buying it because his behavior said something else. What happens at the poker table doesn't totally stay at the poker table, even though this is one aspect of life. I myself know this a bit as well, whereas at some point I realized certain behaviors of mine were being toxic for the overall environment for those people and causing a negative impact on their lives. So I said, okay, it makes sense, has to change. And it doesn't look like Kassouf has really cared to recognize this, and that most people don't really care about this, to be honest. There's loads of behaviors people do that are net negative on, say, any social setting, a party, for example. If you're sobbing in the middle of a party, and it's kind of like being in attention or of sorts, where it hurts everyone overall. There are times for such things, but usually not in the middle of a party, or if you're being really, really obnoxious, etc. It does, and there's some kind of argument for being unethical for these reasons. And it's a bit of a stretch, but it's kind of a similar principle. And definitely in any kind of poker games or business, you're going to get some backlash in some kind of way. It really looks like in most of these situations real fast. Related to this idea was this guy Lao Tzu that came along and thought a bit about the nature of the world. This guy from China, you guys may have heard of him, invented Daoism. And he said that competition should ideally be in the form of play, and a true competitor is one who wants to play his competitors at their best. And it's not so easy to understand why he may say some of these things, but what is collectively beneficial for everyone is in the form of play, and what is the true representation of strength in its ideal form, of its most powerful form, is taking on a competitor at their absolute best. Right? So you can see that pretty clearly. What might be difficult to see is that, okay, well, why not take advantage? That's really a bit of the thing. Well, that's kind of what we get back to at this point, of people not like you as much, and ultimately giving you punishments like 10-second shot clocks, or banning from the WSOP at large. Yes, things like that could happen, or various penalties, etc. If it's tolerated, it will lead to the unfoiling of the game. That's kind of what you get at with the point of cheating at its most extreme variations. If cheating, etc., is tolerated, if also related, as you guys may expect, as if people don't pay their debts, it leads to the unfoiling of everything, because then you can just not pay your debts, and the whole credit system of lending money, or credit system of giving someone any kind of credit in some way, it's not always from money lending, just falls apart because no one can trust each other. It's a related principle. Is Will Kassouf good for the game? So you guys might guess my personal stance on this. Is it good to have attention on oneself or on anyone for having certain negative qualities? Is that really a good thing? If you're a raging cheat, or if you're just ultra annoying, do you really want everyone knowing about it? And as a follow-up to that, if poker is known for people being raging cheats, or outrageously annoying, or raging douchebags, or you name it, or just berating constantly, is that really a good thing for poker? Not really. That will detract loads and loads of people, get more eyeballs. Yes, it will attract more people, but those people are going to be either cool, or they're going to be chill with the idea of people berating lots of people, or they're going to be those kinds of people themselves. Do we want to be around lots of people that want to berate everybody and possibly cheat and possibly do whatever negative things or being annoying. In Kassouf's case, he's not a cheat to my understanding, although there is this thing about him palming $100. I don't really know the details of that. It does not sound good. I'm not casting judgment on that. I don't know details. He is ragingly annoying, and I'd rather not be at a table with 8 other Kassoufs. It might drive myself crazy, and I might even not tolerate it for the sake of winning their money, which may happen. I think that's really gets to the bottom line of things, is you have to take the idea of if something's good for the game out to its inevitable conclusions, which are more annoying people will come in, and people have to tolerate this for a longer time if it's good for the game. Intention is not necessarily a good thing. People think it's a good thing in the US because they're so addicted, or rather they idolize things in excess, which if you think deeply about it is not really the right way of doing things. This gets again back into the spiritual realm, and the idea being eventually those things don't work in your favor. It would be much nicer to have eyeballs on poker for the right kinds of reasons, like people being fun to play around or things being entertaining in some kind of interesting way, which is what I've been trying to do, not be annoying. So basically, not really is he good for the game. He's more like a catalyst, I would say. He's a polarizing figure, and if his attention is used in the right or wrong way, as it can be used for good for poker or used for bad for poker, I would say he follows more the form of a catalyst. So what are your thoughts on Mr. Kassouf and trash talk at the poker tables? Please use your comments below. And by the way, remember, if you want to actually get good at the game, and I've got a shout out because that's my thing, I owe loyalty to the people that want me to do things for them that I believe in. Check out GTO Wizard. It's very good software. I use it myself for all my seminars and teaching and learning. I learned loads of things from GTO Wizard, learning the right way, learning how to actually beat your opponents and not have to trash talk them into being annoyed at you and calling the floor. Also join the Jungleverse to join a community of people who are committed towards learning to actually beat the game in the right kind of way and become healthier versions of themselves and crush life. That's the whole point of why I made the Jungleverse, was to help you guys and to help you have a better life and hopefully accomplish your dreams. Check out GTO Wizard, check out the Jungleverse, stop being annoying, stop being an asshole, and see you at the poker tables.